But first, the story of a local bank that has, in a very short time, become one of the fastest growing businesses in our region. In spite of the recession, housing market troubles, and banking industry setbacks, John Marshall Bank has landed on the Washington Business Journal's list of top commercial lenders. And customers say the bank not only answers your call when you want a loan, but even takes you to lunch. Joining us today, the man wooed to take the reins after previous big wins in banking, Chairman and CEO John Maxwell, and Bill Ridenour, John Marshall Bank President. Our thanks to you both for joining us on Washington Business Report.
Thank you.
So, Mr. Maxwell, let me start with you. You had success in previous careers in the banking world, but you had taken off and gone to Europe and enjoyed some time with your family and 3 young boys. Why did you try and stage a comeback just as things were not looking as good in the banking industry?
Well, Rebecca, that's a good question. In fact, I've asked myself that question many times. But when we came back, so many bankers were out there, including Bill and other folks from the previous bank, that wanted to do this again. We looked at the market and said it was a perfect time to start a community bank.
So you bought the bank. Tell us the name of the bank originally before it became John Marshall Bank.
It was a Security First Bank. They had just opened up in 2006. We're growing, but couldn't really get off the ground. So we brought in the core group from James Monroe Bank, the bank that I'd sold, put the two together, effected a change of control, renamed it John Marshall Bank, and took off from there in 2008.
Now, James Monroe had done so well that, as I said, you could even afford to take a little year off and spend it in Europe. But you were warning people, look, don't expect the same kind of growth twice. The fundamentals are not there this time around. Bill Ridenour, what do you think happened that allowed John Marshall to be a success during a recession?
Well, I think the advantage we had that when we went into the original bank and took it over, we were able to start essentially with a clean slate. It was such a small bank, we were able to go out into the marketplace with our new capital and make loans to people that, you know, with our experience in the marketplace, we knew that they were good credit risks.
So tell me that. What is your experience that you think someone's worth making a loan to that the bigger banks don't? What do you know that they don't know?
Well, it's not so much that we don't know. It's just that we are able to look at things, since we're small, on a case-by-case basis, whereas we think some of the larger banks will look at things more as in a macro sense. So, for example, if they decide that the real estate market is declining, they will take the position that we want to restrict our real estate lending, whereas we'll take the position that just because the market's declining doesn't mean that all real estate transactions are bad. We can look at it on a case-by-case to make the decision which one's good and which one's not.
Talk to me about community banking. We've seen other banks in our area do well in spite of the recession as well, Burke and Herbert and some of the others. And they say it was because they stayed out of some of the riskier financial products that the big banks took on. Was that part of your success as well, or what do you attribute it to?
Yeah, we attribute it to really just, as Bill said, knowing our clients and providing the services that they need without going on and doing some things that are riskier, things that we didn't understand. So we call it plain vanilla banking. It's providing basic services to the clients and taking good care of them.
So I cited this earlier. Sherry Garvin's the CEO of Leesburg Pharmacy, and she said you did offer to take her out to lunch when she called for a loan. That's time-consuming, labor-intensive. It costs you money. You do that for every client? I assume not.
We do that for everybody. That's one of the nice things
You're going to
about...
have a big lunch bill after the show is over. I got to warn you.
Well, we'd like to offer you the first opportunity at that. But no, we do that for all of our clients. In fact, that's one of the nice things about working with a community bank is you can go to the lunch with the president or the chairman and CEO, whereas going to lunch with the chairman of Bank of America probably doesn't happen for most everybody out there. So we do offer that opportunity. In fact, we encourage our officers to go to the customer's business as opposed to having them coming in to see us. We take the banking to the business.
Bill, how do you handle the fact, though, that, and I'm guilty as charged, I'm constantly doing stories about the great things that a community bank can offer, and then I go for those easy ATM machines that the big banks can offer. You've only got 4 branches in this area. Granted, I think you grew something like 73%.
Right.
You are one of the largest commercial lenders in the entire Washington area. But 4 branches is 4 branches. What can you say to customers that says it's worth coming to a smaller bank?
Well, a lot of what's helped community banks in this market is technology changes. For example, if you're a customer of our bank, you can use any ATM machine at a 7-Eleven for free. And there's a heck of a lot of 7-Elevens.
Yes, there are.
So that's a way that we can compete with that. And then there's a technology called remote deposit machines, where you can essentially have a machine in your office that is a secured scanning system where you can take your checks, scan them through the secured machine, and they're transferred to the bank. So you never really even have to come into the branch.
John Maxwell, you've seen it. We've seen it in so many banks, Wells Fargo, Citibank, so many of the big ones saying, we're still not making enough money. We're going to start charging more for ATM fees. We're going to start charging for use of debit cards and things like that. How are you resisting the siren's call of increasing fees on those kinds of services?
Well, I think that's one thing that differentiates us from the bigger banks is we don't look to fees as the primary source of income. In fact, if you look at our bottom line, it might be 5% of our income, whereas the bigger banks is probably 50 to 60% of their income. So we count on that loyal customer coming in, and basically it's spread income for us. We're not looking at raising our fees or going for any ways that we can get more fees out of our clients. In fact, part of the attraction for us is that we don't have all those fees. If we start putting those fees in place, we're going to be just like the other big banks.
So talk to our small business viewers who, during the recession and even now, still say it is very difficult to get a loan. I remember talking once to the owner of Busboys and Poets, a very successful restaurant here in the Washington area that continues to grow. But he talked about, despite his success, how difficult it was convincing the bank to give him the money he needed to grow. What do you look at when a small business comes in your door?
Well, I mean, I think the first thing we look at is their track record, and you know, have they been successful? Do they know, you know, the business that they're in? Do they have secondary sources of repayment? You know, we want to make sure that if, you know, their sales drop off or something changes in their business, then they have other resources that they can tap into to make sure that they pay the loan back.
That they're willing to put behind the company. John Maxwell, we're running out of time. I got to ask you, you were the janitor at a bank when you started off, through high school, through college, and you finally worked your way up to the top. You got to work at the drive-thru as a teller. What are your keys to success for other CEOs?
It's what we tell our own clients. Invest in yourself, invest in your business, and keep your hands at the wheel. Don't trust anybody else. Be there all day, every day, 24/7, and everything will take care of itself.
Gentlemen, congratulations on all of your success in the last couple of years. Thank you for joining us on Washington Business Report.
Thank you.